I was 12 when I learned that love could be measured in empty seats. The stage lights felt hot against my face, but not as hot as the shame burning through my chest as I scanned the audience one more time. Row 7, seats 14 through 17, the ones Mum had circled on the seating chart with her favourite purple pen 3 weeks ago. Empty. All 4 of them, like missing teeth in a smile. My hands trembled inside the sleeves of my white costume. The other girls around me were whispering, doing last-minute adjustments to their hair, their ribbons, their nerves. But I couldn't move. I kept staring at those seats, willing them to fill, as if wanting it badly enough could manifest bodies from air. 5 minutes, dancers, Miss Catherine called from the wings. I touched the pearl hairpin Mum had given me that morning. For good luck, my little swan, she'd said, sliding it into my bun with such care. We'll be cheering so loud you'll hear us over the music. The pin felt heavy now. Or maybe that was just my head. Emma, my dance partner, squeezed my hand. Your family's probably just running late. Traffic, you know? I nodded because it was easier than explaining. Easier than saying that Claire's debate finals were across town at the exact same time, and when I'd mentioned it at breakfast, Dad had paused with his coffee cup halfway to his lips and said, "Both at 3? That's unfortunate." Unfortunate. Such a soft word for what it really meant. Mum had looked between us, me in my dance bag packed and ready, Claire in her blazer already rehearsing her closing arguments. And I'd seen the calculation happen behind her eyes. Quick math, social calculus. Which daughter's event held more weight on the invisible scale they kept in their minds? Your grandmother will come to your recital, Helena, Mum had said, already reaching for her purse. Claire needs us there. This debate could determine her scholarship. My solo could determine if I get into the summer intensive, I'd whispered. But I'd whispered it, and Claire had said her part out loud, so I suppose the volume decided everything. Grandma never came. She'd called an hour before, apologetic and tired. Her hip was acting up. She'd watched the recording. The recording. As if watching me dance through a screen was the same as being there, as feeling the floor vibrate with the music, as seeing my face light up when I nailed the double pirouette I'd been practicing for months. The curtain rose. The music started. And I danced for an audience that was complete except for the 4 people I needed most. I danced perfectly. Every step, every turn, every extension, exactly as choreographed. My body knew what to do even when my heart was somewhere else. The audience clapped. They even stood. But I was looking at row 7, at the empty seats that stayed empty, and the applause felt like it was happening in another room, muffled and distant. Backstage, Miss Catherine hugged me. Helena, that was extraordinary. You've never danced like that before. She meant it as a compliment. But what she'd seen wasn't excellence. It was desperation. I'd danced like I was trying to prove something to people who weren't even there to see it. I changed out of my costume in silence while the other girls chatted about where they were going for dinner with their families. My phone sat in my bag, screen dark. No messages, no missed calls. Just silence, which was somehow louder than any notification could be. Mum called at 6, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm. "Sweetie, we're so sorry we missed it, but Claire won. First place. We're taking her to Romano's to celebrate. Grandma said you were beautiful. We'll watch the video tonight, I promise." "Okay," I said, "don't sound so sad. We'll do something special for you next week. Just us. I promise." Promises felt cheap when they came after disappointment, like putting a band-aid on a wound that needed stitches. They brought me home a to-go box. Chicken parmesan, my favourite. But it was cold by the time they arrived, and I'd already eaten cereal for dinner, standing at the kitchen counter in my sweatpants, still tasting the metallic disappointment in my mouth. Claire was glowing. She talked through the entire meal they'd had without me, describing the restaurant, the dessert, Dad's speech about how proud he was. Mom showed me pictures on her phone, Claire holding her trophy, Claire with the debate coach, Claire with Mum and Dad on either side, their smiles wide and genuine. "Show me your performance," Claire said, not unkindly. She was never unkind. That was part of the problem. She was easy to love, easy to celebrate, easy to choose. I pulled up the recording on my laptop. We sat on the couch, all four of us, and watched me dance on a screen 6 inches wide. Mum and Dad made appreciative noises. Claire said it was beautiful, but they were looking at a recording, at a memory of something they decided wasn't worth attending in real time. "You're so talented," Mum said, kissing the top of my head. "But talent without witness is just movement in an empty room." That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The pearl hairpin sat on my nightstand, catching the moonlight. "For good luck," she'd said. But luck required presence. Luck required people who showed up. I thought about all the times this had happened before. Claire's science fair, the same day as my art show opening. Claire's student government speech, the same day as my music recital. Claire's college tour, the same weekend as my dance competition. Each time, the scale tipped the same way. Each time, I told myself it was fine, fair, logical. But logic doesn't fill empty seats. I pulled my blanket up to my chin and felt something inside me go quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after screaming until your voice gives out. The kind that settles in your bones like sediment. I didn't cry. Crying required energy, and I had none left. The next morning, I woke up tired. Not sleepy tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. I went through the motions. Breakfast, school, dance practice after. Miss Catherine pulled me aside to tell me a scout from the intensive program had been in the audience, had asked for my information. I should have been excited. Instead, I just felt hollow. "Your parents must be so proud," she said. "They are," I lied. The weeks that followed blurred together. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I congratulated Claire when she got the scholarship. I helped her pack for debate nationals. I stood in family photos and looked like I belonged there. But inside, something had shifted. Or maybe broken. It was hard to tell the difference. I started spending more time in the studio. Not practicing, just sitting in the empty space, feeling the silence. There was something honest about it. At least the studio's emptiness didn't pretend to be anything else. Mum noticed eventually. "You've been quiet lately?" "I'm fine." "Are you upset about something?" How do you explain to someone that you're upset about nothing and everything? That it's not one moment, but 1,000 small moments, accumulated like snowfall until you're buried? "I'm just tired," I said. She accepted this because it was easier than digging deeper. We'd all become experts at taking each other at surface value. The intensive program sent their acceptance letter in May. Full scholarship. 8 weeks in New York. I told my parents at dinner. "That's wonderful," Mum said, "but it's the same time as Claire's leadership camp." I stared at her. "What I mean is, we can't drive you both to different states. Maybe you could defer for a year." "It's not deferrable," I said quietly. "Well, we'll figure something out," Dad said, but his tone suggested otherwise. I went. Alone. On a bus. With my suitcase and my dreams and the growing certainty that I would always be the daughter who could be deferred, postponed, rescheduled. The summer was beautiful and lonely. I danced 8 hours a day. I improved. I made friends. But every time someone asked if my family would come for the final showcase, I changed the subject. They didn't come to that either. Claire's leadership camp had a family weekend the same day. I performed for a full house of strangers and felt nothing. Not disappointment anymore. just acceptance. This was how it would always be. When I came home in August, I was different, quieter, more distant. I kept my achievements to myself because sharing them required an audience that cared, and I was tired of performing for people who weren't watching. Senior year started. Claire was applying to Ivy League schools. I was applying to dance conservatories. Every college counselling session became about Claire's essays, Claire's interviews, Claire's future. "What about Helena's applications?" Grandma asked once. "Oh, she's handling those herself," Mum said proudly. "She's so independent." Independent. Another soft word for neglected. I finished my applications alone, wrote my essays alone, filmed my audition videos alone in the studio after everyone had gone home. I got into Juilliard. I told them at dinner, the acceptance letter in my hands. "Juilliard!" Mum gasped. "Helena, that's incredible!" But Claire had gotten into Princeton that same day, and her acceptance somehow took up more space at the table. More celebration, more phone calls to relatives, more pictures, more joy. My letter sat next to my plate, folded in half. That night, I found myself in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. I looked tired, worn, like a photocopy of myself, faded from too many reproductions. I thought about the future, 4 more years of being the secondary story, of my achievements mattering less because they were mine, of loving people who loved me back, but not quite enough, not quite equally. The thought that came next was dark and heavy and unavoidable. Would they miss me more if I wasn't here? Not as a threat, as genuine curiosity, as a hypothesis I could never test. I sat on the bathroom floor, my back against the cold tile, and felt something inside me let go. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, just a quiet release, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. I didn't leave the bathroom for a while. When I finally did, my face was calm, resolved. I'd found a strange peace in my exhaustion. The next weeks passed in a haze. I went to school, I danced, I existed, but I was watching myself from outside my body, a spectator to my own life. The night it happened, there was no drama, no fight, no inciting incident. Claire got another award. Mom and Dad toasted her at dinner. I smiled and clapped and felt nothing. After, I went to my room. I lay down on my bed. The pearl hairpin was still on my nightstand, dust gathering on its surface. I picked it up, held it in my palm, and felt the weight of all the empty seats, all the missed moments, all the love that had been portioned out unequally. I was so tired. I closed my eyes, and the tiredness won. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, but it was different. The posters on the wall were older versions. My bookshelf held books I'd read years ago. My body felt smaller, lighter. I sat up, my heart pounding, and caught sight of myself in the mirror across the room. I was 12. My hands, small hands, child hands, flew to my face. My hair was shorter, my face was rounder. I was wearing the pyjamas I'd worn the night before my first dance recital, the one I'd remembered lying in bed as an 18-year-old who'd just given up. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. But the pearl hairpin on my nightstand, younger, newer, not yet gathering dust, said otherwise. I grabbed my phone. An old model, one I'd had years ago. The date on the screen. The day before the recital. The day before they'd chosen Claire's debate over my dance. I sat there for a long time, just breathing. My mind raced through possibilities, explanations, logic, but logic had no place here. This was something else entirely. Second chance, do-over, rebirth. I had my entire timeline back. Every choice, every moment, every opportunity to change the trajectory. And I knew with absolute clarity exactly what I needed to do differently. I got dressed calmly. No rushing, No panic. I went downstairs where Mum was making breakfast, Dad was reading the news, and Claire was already dressed in her debate blazer. "Morning, sweetheart," Mum said, kissing my forehead. "Big day today." "Yes," I said, "it is." At breakfast, when Dad mentioned the schedule conflict, both events at 3, I didn't whisper this time. "I need you there," I said clearly. "At my recital, all of you." Mum blinked. "Honey, we talked about this. Claire's debate can be recorded," I said. "My performance can't be watched the same way later, you know that." "But the scholarship," Dad started. "I have a scout coming to watch me," I said. Not a lie, I remembered the scout. Remembered Miss Catherine telling me about it. "From the summer intensive programme. This matters for my future too." The table went quiet. Claire looked at me surprised. I'd never pushed back before. Never made demands. Never claimed my space. "Helena," Mum said carefully, "you're being a bit selfish, don't you think?" The word hit me, but I didn't flinch. I'd felt worse. "Maybe," I said. "But I'm asking you to choose me this once. Please." I saw the conflict in their faces, the calculation. But this time, I didn't look away. I held their gaze until they couldn't dismiss me. "We'll figure something out," Dad said finally. And they did. Dad went to Claire's debate. Mum and Grandma came to my recital. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't all 4 of them. But Mum sat in row 7, seat 14, and when I danced, I saw her face in the audience. I saw her tears when I landed the double pirouette. I saw her stand up with everyone else, her applause real and present and for me. After, she hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You were magnificent," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I almost missed it." Almost. But she hadn't. That was what mattered. Claire still won her debate. Dad recorded it. We watched both recordings that night as a family, mine and hers, and for once the joy was distributed equally. It was a small change, one event, one choice, but it shifted something fundamental. I carried that shift forward. When the next conflict arose, Claire's science fair and my art show, I spoke up earlier. "I need you there, both of you." And slowly, incrementally, they started to hear me. Not always, not perfectly, but more than before. Because I'd stopped making it easy for them to choose. I'd stopped whispering. I'd stopped accepting crumbs and calling it love. The summer intensive acceptance came again. This time, when Mum mentioned Claire's leadership camp, I said, "I'm going to New York. I need you to help me get there." "But Claire can take a bus to her camp," I said firmly. "Or Dad can drive her. But I need one of you with me for my first day." Mum came with me. We stayed in a hotel the night before orientation. We had room service and watched old movies and talked in a way we'd never talked before, as if I was a person with needs and dreams that mattered. "I didn't realize how much I'd been overlooking you," she said quietly that night. "You were always so self-sufficient, so easy." Easy. There was that word again. "I was quiet because I thought that's what you needed," I said. "But I need you to see me, even when I'm not demanding attention." She cried. We both did. And something healed between us, slow and imperfect, but real. Senior year was different too. When college acceptance season came, I made sure my achievements weren't overshadowed. I invited them to my auditions. I asked them to read my essays. I refused to handle everything alone. When my Juilliard acceptance came the same day as Claire's Princeton acceptance, I put my letter on the table and said, "We're celebrating both of us today, equally." And we did. The day of my final high school showcase, the last performance before graduation, was also the day of Claire's academic awards ceremony. This time, I didn't wait for them to choose. "Record the awards," I said. come to my performance. This is the last time you'll see me dance before I leave for college. I need you there." They came. All 4 of them. Row 7, seats 14 through 17, filled. I danced differently this time. Not with desperation, but with joy. Not trying to prove anything, but celebrating everything. Every step was for me, and for them, and for the girl I'd been, who thought empty seats were her destiny. When it ended, they rose to their feet with everyone else. But their applause was louder. Their pride was visible. Their presence was everything. After, in the parking lot, Dad pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I looked at him, surprised. "For what?" "For all the times I chose wrong, for not seeing that you needed us just as much as Claire did, for making you fight to be seen." I felt my throat tighten. "You came today, that's what matters. But you shouldn't have had to ask. That's the part I'm sorry for." We stood there in the fading light, and I let him hug me. Let the apology settle into the places that had been hollow. Healing isn't linear, it doesn't erase the past, but it makes the present bearable and the future possible. Claire approached as we walked to the car. "You were incredible tonight," she said. "Thank you, and congratulations on your awards." "We watched the ceremony recording after," she said, "but I'm glad they were here for you. You deserved that." She didn't say sorry. Maybe she didn't realize she had anything to apologize for. She'd never asked them to choose her. They'd just done it. But there was awareness in her words. Recognition. That was enough. That night, we all watched the recording of my performance. But it was different this time because they'd been there. The recording was a souvenir, not a substitute. "You know what?" Mum said suddenly. "We should watch your old recital, the one from when you were 12. I don't think we ever watched it together." My heart stopped. In my first life, they'd promised to watch it and never did. The recording had sat on my laptop unwatched until I deleted it years later in a fit of bitterness. "I'd like that," I said softly. We pulled it up. 6 years old now, but still clear. And we watched 12-year-old me dance for an audience that was missing 4 people, dance perfectly despite the heartbreak. "You were beautiful even then," Grandma said, her voice thick with emotion. "I wish I'd been there," Mum whispered. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're here now." And she was. They all were. The months that followed were full of lasts. Last family dinners, last movie nights, last mornings in my childhood home. But they were present for all of them. Not perfectly, old habits die hard, but with intention, with effort, with love that had learned to show up. The day I left for Juilliard, they all drove me, made a whole event of it, helped me move into my dorm, met my roommate, took approximately 400 pictures. "Call us after your first class," Dad said. "Text us when you're free," Mum added. "Send videos of your performances," Claire chimed in. I promised I would, and I meant it. As they drove away, I stood on the sidewalk and watched their car disappear into New York traffic. My phone buzzed, a group chat message from Mum. "Already miss you, so proud of you, love you." I smiled and typed back, "Love you too. Thank you for coming to my recital." It had been 6 years since that first recital, the one they'd missed, the one that had broken something inside me. 6 years since I danced for empty seats. But in this life, this strange, impossible second life, those seats had been filled. Not perfectly, not without struggle, not without me learning to demand the space I deserved, but filled. And now, as I stood on the edge of my new life, I carried forward not the bitterness of what had been, but the peace of what could be when you refused to accept less than you were worth. My phone buzzed again. "Claire, By the way, I set up an alert to remind me whenever you have a performance. I won't miss another one. Something warm bloomed in my chest. Not forgiveness, that had come gradually, in pieces, but something better. Hope, connection. The promise that family could learn, could change, could choose better when given the chance. I walked into my dorm building, my heart light, my future bright, and the past, both versions of it, finally at peace behind me. That night, before bed, I set up my new room, put up posters, arranged my books, made the space mine, and on my nightstand I placed the pearl hairpin. The same one Mum had given me twice now, once before a recital to empty seats, once before a recital to filled ones. For good luck, she'd said, and this time luck had required more than just hope. It had required presence, voice, the courage to be seen. I picked up the pin and held it to the light. It caught the glow from my desk lamp, shimmering. The girl I'd been, in both lives, deserved to be witnessed. To dance for an audience that showed up. To matter enough to be chosen. And now, finally, she had been. Years later, when I was a principal dancer with the company, when my performances were broadcast and reviewed and celebrated, my parents came to every single show they could attend. Sometimes they brought Claire, sometimes just the two of them. Sometimes Grandma joined, hip permitting. But they came. Row 7, whenever possible, or the best seats they could get. And they watched, really watched, as I danced not just for audiences of hundreds, but for the 4 people who had learned, slowly and imperfectly, to fill the seats that mattered most. After one performance, a particularly emotional piece about loss and rebirth, Mom came backstage with tears streaming down her face. "That was you, wasn't it?" she said. "That was your story." I didn't ask what she meant. I knew, somehow she'd seen it, the pain I'd carried, the death and rebirth, the journey from empty seats to filled ones. "Yes," I said simply. She hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry we ever gave you that story to tell." "I'm not," I said, and I meant it. It taught me that I'm worth showing up for, that I don't have to earn love by being easy to overlook. "You were never easy to overlook," she said. "We were just looking in the wrong direction." And that, perhaps, was the truest thing anyone had ever said about my first life. But this life, this second chance, had taught them to turn their gaze, to see what had always been there, to choose differently. The final performance of my debut season, they surprised me. All 4 of them came, but they weren't alone. They brought a banner. Homemade, slightly crooked, absolutely perfect. It said, "Helena's biggest fans, row 7. Security tried to make them put it away. Mum argued that it was a family heirloom. From my place on stage during curtain call, I saw it. Saw them. Saw the love that had learned to show up in visible, unmistakable ways. And I took my bow not with the bitterness of a girl who danced for empty seats, but with the grace of a woman who had taught the people she loved how to fill them. The applause washed over me, but above it all, I heard my family, my imperfect, learning, present family, cheering louder than everyone else. Row 7, seats 14 through 17. Finally, completely, wholly filled. And in that moment, under those lights, I understood something hadn't in either life before. Rebirth isn't about changing the people around you. It's about changing how you show up in your own story. I'd stopped whispering, started demanding, learned that love without presence is just a word, and they'd learned to listen. That was the real happy ending. Not perfection, not erasure of past pain, but growth, change, the slow, imperfect work of becoming people who chose each other, actively and repeatedly, until it became second nature. I walked off stage that night not as the girl who died from invisibility, but as the woman who'd been reborn into sight. And the empty seats of my past became a reminder. You teach people how to love you by showing them what you need, by refusing to accept less, by knowing that you are worth the effort of being chosen. Every performance after, I danced for those 4 seats. Sometimes they were filled. Sometimes work or distance or life intervened. But they were never empty the way they'd been before. Because even when my family couldn't physically attend, they watched. Live streams, recordings, photos, however they could. The empty seats had taught them what absence felt like. And they decided, slowly and with effort, never to let me feel that way again. The recital I died over in my first life became the recital that saved me in my second, not because the performance itself changed, but because I'd learned to make them see it, and they'd learned to look.